Hi folks, Speedway Tag here. I'm doing a little review on the Button Shy game, Jason Glover's Stew. Okay, comes in that beautiful little wallet, as all of them do. There's the rule book, great artwork. And these are the cards. I've also got the expansions in here, which I'll show you in a minute. But man, I really love unique artwork, and this has got unique artwork. I mean, I haven't probably played as many games as most of you guys, but I haven't seen this style of artwork on any other in any other game. There's something so, you know, engaging and inviting about this style of artwork. It's very different, and I really like it. It's excellent. So I really should mention the artist, shouldn't I? Considering it's Jason Glover himself. Okay. Surprise, surprise. It's a brilliant little game that you can whip out any time at a table with a group of people. It can play, wow, gee, it plays so many, 2 to 4 players. Gee, you almost could play more. But it's one of those games that you just throw the deck out on the table, put all the vermin at the top, those animals and the vagabond are considered vermin, and away you go. Well, let's read the flavor text here, okay? Winter's almost here, and it's time to use your harvest in the traditional traditional community stew. Watch out, though, hungry vermin are looking to fill their burrows with snacks before the snow comes. Pitch into the pot, chase off critters, and get ready for a hot bowl of stew, right? All right, so you're a group of farmers making a stew together, and at the same time trying to scare off the critters who are wanting to come and steal stuff from your stew. And you build the stew yourself, which is amazing and really fun. Okay, so the stew is built from these cards here, and I'll explain the critters and the vermin in a minute. But the stew, we put all of these cards into a deck, and then we start building the stew. And so I'll show you how that works in a minute, but there's the potato, and each potato that ends up in the stew is going to be worth points equal to the total number of potatoes in the stew. So if there's 3 potatoes in the stew, each one is worth 3. Leeks in the stew are worth 3 points. Chicken in the stew is worth 5 points. You'll get 6 points if there's only 1 garlic in the stew, but nice and thematically, you only get 1 if both of them are there, because you've overdone it. Each carrot is worth 2 points. You can even put a stone, which some people apparently do, in the stew. That's going to reduce the points of the stew by 3. Okay, the base game comes with these critters. The vagabond, if he's not scared off when someone calls stew and wants to score the stew, there's -3 points if the chicken is in the stew, and +3 points if the chicken is not in the stew. If you don't scare the raccoon off before you score the stew, he's going to eat one of your potatoes. Likewise, the boar, if not scared off, will eat one of your garlic. The fox will eat the chicken. The gopher will eat a leek. And the rabbit will eat a carrot. Okay, so that's going to affect the scoring of your stew. Why are you scoring your stew? Well, that's how the game works. I'll show the expansions in a minute. But you gather up the base cards. Okay, you gather them up and you shuffle them up. Okay, let's hope I can do this one-handed. Not the ideal way to do it, but let's see how's that go. All right, that looks pretty good. I'll cut it. All right, so this is how the game starts. Okay, with the critters up there and a deck of cards there. Now, on your turn, you're just going to take the top card and you're going to look at it. And you're going to decide if you're going to use that card to scare off a critter or feed it, in inverted commas, or you're going to put it into the stew. Only you know this card. No one else is looking at this. So let's say I decide to put it into the stew. The stew is this face down pile. Okay, the next player would take a card secretly. Oh, it's another potato. Now, this person doesn't know that I've put a potato in that card, right? So this is a little bit of memory, but also trying to predict what people are putting in the stew. Because when you believe the stew has got 12 or more points in it, you can yell stew in between turns or on your turn. And if indeed the stew turns out to have 12 points or more, you're going to get the points for that round. Okay, so you keep playing, each player keeps playing cards into the stew. This player might think, no, I'm not going to put this potato into the stew. I'm going to mess with the other players. I'm going to scare off one of the vermin. So he decides to scare the boar off. Okay, so now if the boar was still showing and not scared off when someone called stew, we have to do his effect on the stew here. But because he's getting scared off like that, he's not going to affect the stew at the end of the round. Next player takes a card. Okay, it's a leek. He's going to say, you know what, I'm going to put this into the stew. Remember, he doesn't know that there's already a potato there. Could be anything, but he's putting that into the stew. Next player takes a card. It's a garlic. He's going to think, you know, I'm putting that into the stew. Next person takes a card. It's a carrot. This person is worried about the raccoon, the gopher, the rabbit, right? Stealing things from the stew at the end and affecting the score, right? That's the key. These guys will affect the score if they're not scared off. So he's actually going to scare off the gopher because the gopher eats a leek, takes a leek out of the stew. So this player is going to make sure that the gopher is not allowed to do that. Next player takes a card. It's a stone. It's -3 points. He actually doesn't want to reduce the points of the stew. He could and mess with other players. See, the choices here are very cleverly presented because you kind of only know a third, maybe a half of what might be in the stew, and then you have to decide: am I going to try and reduce the stew, and so when someone calls stew, they're going to get it wrong. It's going to be below 12. Am I going to leave all the critters open so that someone calls stew, but the critter's going to ruin the score, bring it below 12? Or am I going to try and get the stew above 12? This guy's going to throw this stone at... No, you know what? He's going to put in the stew. He's going to put in the stew. This next guy goes like this. Okay, it's carrots. He's putting that in the stew. This guy gets another potato. Okay, he's going to put that in the stew. Let's say I draw a chicken next. Okay, where's the chicken? Okay, I want to draw a chicken next. Okay, just so you can see. Okay, so next person draws the chicken. Right, now he has to think about the vagabond with the chicken, because if the vagabond's not scared off and the chicken's in the stew's losing 3 points. But if the vagabond, if there's no chicken in the stew, you're getting another 3 points into the stew. You have to allow for that. So does this guy really want to put the chicken in the stew with the vagabond not scared off? Because if it goes in, you're losing 3 points. Let's put it in. Next guy yells stew. Right? So we stop. Right? So next guy's yelled stew, and then we actually score the stew. Now, the person who yelled stew is hoping that there's 12 points or more in there when we lay it out, okay? If there's less than 12 points, he's going to lose points for the round. He's going to get nothing while everybody else gets 1 point. But if he is correct and there is 12 or more points in the stew, he's getting 2 points and the other people are getting nothing. First one to 5 wins. So you just keep playing rounds until you get to 5. All right, so this is our stew at the moment. This is what it looks like. But we're not playing with those expansions yet. I'll show you those in a minute. Okay. So let's score the stew, right? 5 points for the chicken. Oh, and actually, first what we need to do, we need to allow the critters to affect the stew first. Okay, so let's start from here. The vagabond, it's going to be minus 3 points if the chicken is in the stew. Okay, it is in the stew. So I should write. See if I can write this down somewhere. What the score is. Okay, so here's our stew for the first round. Okay. With the vagabond not frightened off, we're losing 3 points because the chicken is in the stew. So we got 5 points for the chicken, all right, but -3 because the vagabond's not scared off. The raccoon is going to eat one potato before we score, so we've got to get rid of one potato. The raccoon's eaten that. Okay, the boar's been scared off. The fox will eat the chicken before the stew is scored. That's interesting. We should actually do that before the vagabond. Really, the vagabond should be done last. So I'm going to get rid of this -3. The fox eats the chicken. Right, and get rid of this 5 points that we just got for the chicken. Right, so the fox has eaten the chicken. Now the vagabond, there's no chicken in the stew, so there's 3 points. So really now sorry about that, our stew is 3. Okay, the rabbit will eat 1 carrot. Is there a carrot in the stew? Yes, there is. Now the guy who called stew is getting really nervous because the points are disappearing. Okay, so that's what's left. We've got a -3 for the stone. There is only 1 garlic in the stew. Okay, so that's 6 points for the garlic. 3 points for a leek. That's pretty good. Okay. 3 points for the leek, and the rest of the stew is 1 potato, which is 1 point. Okay, so that gives us 10, 13 minus 3 is 10 points. So that stew is worth 10. It's less than 12, so the guy who calls stew got it wrong, and will get 0 points this round, and the others will all get 1 point. Okay, that's pretty cool, because you take that risk. If you call stew, and you get it wrong, you're actually giving points to the other players. So that's how stew is played. It's super fun. You can see it's very tricky to know which critters to cover up so that they won't affect the points of the stew. Okay, you saw how they took things out of the pot before we did the final score of the stew, and that vagabond is very tricky. Again, if the fox is unfed and the chicken's in the stew, you've got to get rid of the chicken for the fox first, and then do the vagabond scoring. Okay, so then we do another round, but let's just say we were playing with our expansions, which are really cool expansions for this game. And I'll just briefly show you how that works now. Okay, so we put all our stuff back in the stew, all of this, and our expansions are the crows and corn. So we've got corn now that will go into the stew. It'll give you 4 points in the stew, but it'll lose a point for each ingredient on top of it. So we've got to keep the order. And with that expansion comes the crow, who eats the top card before the stew is scored. So you lose the card on top of your stew, as long as the crow is not scared off. And the other expansion is really good too, Fungus Among Us. Fungus Among Us. All right, with this, you get the gnome. Okay, so he sits up there as another critter that you have to scare off. Otherwise, he's going to make your stew lose 2 points for each Bella mushroom in it. And yes, with this expansion, you get 4 Bella mushrooms, which gives you 1 point. And you also get this monstrosity of I don't know, is it a potato that's gone off? It's called a mutant. And the mutant is worth points equal to the total number of unique ingredients in the stew. So, we'll just do one more, shall we? With all of these new ones in here, and the crows, and the crow and the gnome as well. Okay, let's hope I can shuffle this decently. It's pretty hard with one hand, of course. But let's go. Okay, almost there. Good. All right. So once again, next round, player draws a card. Okay, it's a chicken. Okay, he's thinking, if I put the chicken, I got to make sure I knock the fox off. And the vagabond, really, because if the chicken is in the stew, I'm losing 3 points. Wow, I don't know if I want to put this chicken in this stew. It seems like a lot of work to get the 5 points. I love these choices that you have to make with this game. It's deceptively thinky, this game. It's not as casual as you think. You know what? I'm going to actually scare the fox. I'll scare the vagabond off with that. Okay? So the vagabond has no impact on the game. The next person looks at that. There's the mutant. Wow. Let's put the mutant in the stew for some fun. Next person has a look. He puts a potato in the stew. Next person has a look. Carrots. I'm not sure I want the gnome taking off 2 points for every mushroom in the stew, so I'm going to actually scare the gnome off with my carrots. Next person plays leeks. He's going to secretly put that in the stew. Remember, you don't know what other people are putting in the stew or what card they've used to scare the critters off. Next person, he wants to put that mushroom in the stew. Next person's got a garlic. He's putting that in the stew. Next person's got a potato. He's going to scare... Wow, let's scare the boar off again, okay? Because you don't want him messing with the garlic. All right, we'll put another mushroom in the stew. Next person draws a card. Yeah, he doesn't know how many mushrooms are in the stew, right? So he might also put that in the stew, not realizing 2 other people have already put mushrooms in. There's a leek. He might put that in. Okay. There's another mushroom. Let's scare off the fox. Okay, this person. Let's say we get the corn. Let's see if we can get corn going. Let's say the corn. Sorry about that. Let's say I draw the corn next. Okay, we'll draw the corn next and put that in the stew. Next person draws a potato, put that in the stew. Next person yells stew. Okay, we're gonna score. All right, if the stew is 12 points or more, this person's gonna get the points for this round. Okay, so the first thing we do is the best thing to remember here, first of all, is because the crow is uncovered, he eats the top card before the stew is scored. So this top card, this potato, is gone. Okay? Then we reveal what's in the stew. Now the corn's on top. And remember, the corn is 4 points, but -1 for each ingredient on top. There's no ingredient on top of the corn, so that's going to be 4 points there. All right, so let's lay out everything. Leeks, mushrooms, a couple of mushrooms there. Some garlic. This is a pretty packed stew, isn't it? All right. Okay, there's leek and there's the mutant at the end as well. First thing you do, again, is you go through the critters and they take what they do out of the stew. The raccoon eats 1 potato before the stew is scored. Okay, so we are going to take a potato out of the stew. Okay, the gopher eats 1 leek before the stew is scored. Okay, so we will take that leek out. The rabbit eats 1 carrot, but there's no carrots in the stew, so rabbit's gonna go away hungry. The gnome's been covered up. The crow has eaten the top card, so now we score. Will the person get 12 points or not? Let's have a look. 4 points for, I'm going to have to write this down. So 4 points for the corn. 3 points for the leek. There's 3 mushrooms there, so that's 3 points. There's only 1 garlic, so that's 6 points. If there was a second garlic, that would be worth only 1. And this mutant is worth points equal to the total number of unique ingredients. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 unique ingredients. This is a massive stew, okay? This is 11, 14, 17, 21 point stew. That person made the right call and will get the 2 points for the round, okay? And you keep going until someone gets 5 points. I hope you enjoy that. I really love this. I hope it gets reprinted. I don't think it's in print at the moment on the Button Shy website, but I think you can get it print and play. So yeah, don't be fooled. This has got a lot of strategy. Not a lot. Look, let's say not a lot, but more strategy than perhaps you would think. It's really nice making that decision whether to knock out a critter, to try and estimate how many points are in the stew. That lovely sort of push your luck feel of knowing when to call stew. Like I said, you can call it in between turns. It doesn't have to be on your own turn. So you've got that little sort of fun party atmosphere with people yelling stew and who called it first and so on. These expansions, the Crows and the Corn and the Fungus Among Us are really good too. Artwork's great. I hope you enjoyed that. See you later.